Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you by Coca-Cola, serving Alaskans quality soft drinks since 1937. By the generous support of the Alaska Native Health Board. And Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by the North Slope Borough Public Information Office.
Welcome to Heartbeat Alaska. I'm Jeanie Greene, bringing you Native news across the North. Thank you for joining me. On today's program, we have the Alaska Native Health Board interview. And compliments of KYUK-TV in Bethel, we traveled to Lower Kalskag for a school cross-country meet there. We have updates on the upcoming Alaska Federation of Natives Convention. All that plus much more news from all around the state. But first, 2 programs ago, I interviewed Mr. John Tetpon. He's traveling with the Governor's Raven Commission, listening to people in rural Alaska define what they feel their problems are. While Mr. Tetpon was in Lower Kalskag, he witnessed a house fire. What caused the fire, we're not certain. But the house did burn down. It burned down because there were no fire truck, no facilities, nothing to stop the fire except garden hoses. We have that video, which gives us a pretty good idea of what life can be like out in rural Alaska.
We were in Upper and Lower Kalskag. Our meeting was delayed for a couple of hours because of a house fire. I believe the house was lost. The fire went into the roof, and I don't think it's livable at this point. And the way that fire was being fought with garden hoses and buckets was very frustrating to see, to witness, and frustrating to the people there. There is a fire hall that was built some 10 or 12 years ago. In it sat a fire engine truck that has never hit the road, has never fought a fire, and in the last 10 or 12 years there have been at least a half a dozen fires in one of those 2 villages with lives lost.
Why is the truck not being used?
There was not enough money to operate, not enough money to complete the project.
Later on in the program, I'll be talking again with Mr. Tetpon about some other problems in Upper Kalskag. But first, here's Gary Fife with National Native News.
This is National Native News. I'm Gary Fife. A committee formed by the National Research Council called on Alaska Natives to contribute to a study it's conducting on changes in the Bering Sea ecosystems. The committee, made up mainly of scientists, met in Anchorage to learn why certain species of marine mammals and birds and fish that were once plentiful in and around the Bering Sea have declined dramatically in recent years. Researchers are especially interested in finding out what native elders observed earlier this century. Oceanographer Warren Wooster of the University of Washington says scientific data does not go back far enough for researchers to understand current conditions in the Bering Sea. Natives who live in the sea's area and who have seen species dwindle from year to year gave the committee their perspectives at the panel discussions. The panel is expected to finish gathering information in about a year. That information will eventually be used in formulating federal policy to manage the resources in the Bering Sea. In an era where schools and some of their native-type names, mascots, and logos often generate controversy, the Madison, Wisconsin School District has made a move to reverse that trend. Instead of just a mascot, an entire school has been renamed in honor of a local Winnebago community leader. The Wisconsin Winnebago newspaper reports that a middle school in a part of the city where Winnebago's families live was given the name the Annie Greencrow Middle School. Annie Greencrow Whitehorse was a strong community leader who established herself as a voice for local Winnebagos on issues such as housing and race relations. The law is in place, but there's no money to put it to work. That's the situation with implementation of the Native American Language Act. Last year, the law was passed, and this year, Alaska Senator Frank Murkowski is pushing his colleagues in the Senate to make funding commitments. So far, he's gathered the support of Iowa Senator Tom Harkin and Senate Indian Affairs Committee Chairman Daniel Inouye. The act is authorized to spend up to $2 million, but no funds were put in place. Funding, if approved, would be channeled through the Administration for Native Americans. The money could be used for programs to research, codify, and teach Native languages and support public communications efforts. Murkowski says there's no time to lose. The school board in Juneau, Alaska has publicly censured one of its members for uttering what it terms a, quote, odious, obscene, and patently offensive remark about the Alaska Native community there. Becky Bear was censured September 29th for violation of the board's conduct code and anti-discrimination policies. On September 21st, Bear, who is an African American, used a profanity when describing the promotion of a Native administrator in the school system. During a special meeting on the subject, the school board voted to censure Bear but stopped short of removing her. It did warn her that future reoccurrences would result in removal. Bear says the language was inexcusable, and she says she is sorry her comment has caused any pain. And finally, salmon plays a major part in the diet and life cycle of the eagles of this nation, but for an injured eagle it may be impossible to get. For those injured birds lucky enough to be turned into the Wildlife Care Center in Arlington, Washington, they will still get salmon, courtesy of the Stillaguamish tribe. The tribe is assisting in the recovery of injured eagles by donating carcasses of Chinook salmon to feed them. Tribal biologist Kip Killebrew says, continuing the cycle of life is traditional to the Stillaguamish, and the tribe felt it was important to make wise use of salmon resources to aid any species. This is National Native News, and for Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Gary Fife.
Thanks, Gary. We'll return with more news from Heartbeat Alaska right after these messages.
Alaska. Hi, Jeanie Greene. Hi, Jeanie Greene.
We have always felt in harmony with the land.
Chakome, Tapiwa, the Skumok, the Tapiachu, Kenok Honestje, Matapiwa, Makaspumos, Akum.
Help the Soil Conservation Service help our earth. Call us today. We owe it to our children.
Alcoholism affects our people not only here, but in the workplace, any kind of workplace. Alcoholism destroys Native families in the bush, but also devastates urban Native families, no matter where they live. But there is help, the Alaska Native Alcoholism Recovery Center. Call us now for yourself, for a friend, or for a family member. At Anarch, we help our people to help themselves.
Hi, Jeanie Greene. My name is Nastasia Sturkey. My name is Andrea Shirley. We like to watch Heartbeat Alaska.
With me again today is Mr. John Tetpon. John Tetpon is traveling with the Governor's Raven Commission, the Rural Alaska Economic and Needs Commission. He's been traveling to various villages around the state. Earlier, we made a report on a fire that he visited, actually witnessed in Lower Kalskag. And I understand that there was some more interesting things in that area, this building that has laid dormant for 10 years. Could you go into that?
Yeah, Jeannie, there was a building that had been built about 12 years ago. in Upper Kalskag actually are about the middle of the two villages. They're only a couple of miles apart. But it hadn't been finished. And millions had been spent on it already. And there was a brand new fire truck in the building that had never been used. And it sat through many years, and talking to the villagers, found out that there had been at least a half a dozen fires during the time that the building was in place. Fire truck was in the building, with lives lost in the villages.
Well, are we talking about the same building now? Because the video that I was watching, I saw this empty building that it was in the process of being built. Now, is this the same building where the fire truck, the famous fire truck now, that does not run? It's sitting in the same building?
Yeah, it sits in the same building. And the reason for it not running, there hadn't been enough money to train the people how to operate the truck, had not received training in fighting fires, how to respond, all the things that local fire departments get training for, and money. And so the fire truck and the building are still there, unusable.
It's interesting now, as Commissioner Blatchford travels to these villages, he's listening, of course, to the fish problem. And that's probably the number one problem in people's minds at this time. But there are more economical development problems, such as this building. Getting the people hired from the village, utilizing the people to build their own buildings. What exactly is a holdup on this building?
I think number one is money. And number two, it's a way around regulation to get the building done. And the way projects get started and finished in the bush is that there'll be a contract let by the state, and it usually goes to a contractor from outside of the community. The contractor then hires his own crew and comes out to complete a project. And that's been one of the biggest problems of villages in the bush. What they want to do and what they would like to do is get the money that's available to complete the project and do the job themselves, and which they haven't been able to do in this, for example, in this case.
So this is an example of the Raven Commission going around getting information from the villages, and we're showing you two examples of some of the problems of living in rural Alaska. And we're not saying that living in rural Alaska is totally awful, because of course it's not. It's really quite wonderful to be able to live out there, but it's also very tough at times. And what else were some of the problems that the people talked about?
Well, I think one of the things that we heard over and over again was that they're talking about not being able to determine their own destinies, self-determination, self-reliance, self-dependence. Those are the things that kept coming up over and over again, besides the issues of subsistence, besides issues of lack of water and sewer systems, health facilities, and we can go on and on.
One thing that stuck out in my mind as I was reviewing some of the tapes from the villages is that there was this constant reminder from the people in the village to Edgar and the rest of the people that traveled with you, don't forget us. Well, this is one way that we're helping you not to be forgotten. We're advertising the fact that there are problems out there. We're putting your faces on and letting the people know that it's difficult out there, and hopefully the Raven Commission will follow through. And speaking of that, on the 12th and 13th of October, there's going to be public forum meetings, and this is at the 4th Avenue Theater. This is a formal Raven Commission meeting. So what's going to happen on the 12th?
Oh, there's a formal organizational meeting of the Raven Commission where they'll organize themselves, and secondly, they will hear about different projects that are now taking place in rural Alaska. On the second day, there are two public hearings, one on economic development opportunities, economic development problems in the bush, and another on the future of such issues as subsistence, commercial fisheries, and sports fishing.
So if you're traveling to Anchorage, and you'll be here a few days ahead of time before the AFN convention, there are workshops throughout the week, I understand, but the elders and youth conferences. Make sure that you stop by the 4th Avenue Theater. These 2 days are just booked all day long with the Raven Commission, and come in and at least be heard. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
If you have news or information from your village or community, please call Heartbeat Alaska, area code 907-563-3507, or fax 907-563-7079.
John Tetpon will return next week as we continue this series on the Raven Commission as they travel around the state, listening to the needs of the people in rural Alaska. We return now to Upper Kalskag, this time to take a look at their health clinic in a building that's been condemned for quite a while. But of course, there's two sides to every coin, and one of the most wonderful things about rural Alaska are its people. We'll also visit with some of the school children in Upper Kalskag and with the high school kids, as 150 of them met from all over that area in a cross-country school meet.
My name is Margie Baratko. I've been a health aide here for 10 years. People come in our clinic all the time and look around. They're going to inspect and see what's going on. I show them. Nothing has been changed. It's been 10 years. Only my hair is getting grayer.
The health clinic is situated in a log cabin that's been condemned for over 10 years. It's another example of piecemeal appropriation from the state government. As Commissioner Edgar Blatchford and the rest of the Raven Commission travel to villages throughout the state, they're learning that the villagers are not only concerned about the disappearance of chum salmon, but also the disappearance of funding for projects that were started years ago. Well, what happened? Perhaps a change in administration. Somebody dropped the ball somewhere. It's true, the villagers are pretty fed up and unhappy, but one thing's certain, life continues to go on in the villages.
Hi, I'm Amanda Wise, and I go to school in
Upper Kalskag?
Yeah,
Where do you live?
Lower Kalskag.
I'm Marianne Vasca. I teach UPIC bilingual, and these are the 5th grade students. There's Aaron, Adam, Raina, Ray, Elena, Josie, Jojo, Garrett, and Grace. They're gonna sing a song.
Oksuk tuzuk jisko itkak lidanga. Oksuk tuzuk jisko itkak oksuk tuzuk jisko itkak.
And what's your name in Yupik, Aaron? Dungarlet. Adam. Alariok. Reina. Junga. Agriak. Angilan. Junga. Jojo. Nachtak. Alariok. And what's Marianne's name? Magujo. What do you call a teacher? Now it's how do you say hi?
Papa.
Goodbye.
Recently, on September 24th, more than 150 students from all over the state were in Kalskag for the Region 1 cross-country meet. The 5-kilometer course started at George Morgan Senior High School, which is halfway between Upper and Lower Kalskag. The runners headed for Upper Kalskag on a route that was mostly flat. Dozens of schools from all over South Central Alaska were represented in the runs, with elementary, junior high, and high school competitions. And here are some of the results for that meet. For the cross-country senior boys, number 1, Liam Chin from Bethel. He made the 5K race in 18 minutes and 57 seconds. Rec Armstrong from Dillingham came in at 19 minutes and 10 seconds. Third place, David Burkhart from Dillingham at 19 minutes 21 seconds. Matt Honan from Unalaska took fourth at 19 minutes and 49 seconds. And Daniel Tutumoak from Lower Yukon School District came in fifth at 19 minutes and 57 seconds. The standings for the cross-country 5K race for senior girls. Number 1, Diana Gregory from Tuluksak. She came in at 23 minutes and 37 seconds, followed by Lori Gunderson from Sandpoint at 23 minutes and 45 seconds. Angela Lockhart from Dillingham came in third at 24 minutes and 1 second. And Diane Gunderson, also from Dillingham, came in fourth at 24 minutes and 22 seconds. Rounding out the top 5, Sarah Rivers from the Lower Yukon School District came in at 24 minutes and 37 seconds. Congratulations to the winners of all the races, the elementary, junior high, and high school competition. Also, thanks to Mike Lane, Andy Josephson, and Ann Barter for the video and their help with this story.
I'd like to thank Vicki Kendall for that excellent video from Upper Kalskag. We turn now to the Alaska Native Health Board interview and Ann Walker.
Today we're talking with Frank Williams, who is the administrative officer at the Alaska Native Medical Center in Anchorage. And I've asked Frank to talk a little bit about appointments that folks out in rural Alaska may want to make when they come in during the week of the AFN convention, October 14th, 15th, and 16th. Frank, are appointments available for outpatient services at ANMC during that time? 15th and 16th?
Yes, they can, actually, for our specialty clinics and for the dental services and for dental services. For specialty clinic services, I would urge folks who are wanting to have clinic appointments to call now to be sure that they've reserved a clinic, special clinic time for themselves. Folks can call 257-1236 and ask for a clinic appointment in such for such services as family medicine, children's clinic, women's health, those sorts of clinics. And for the dental program, during the days of the AFN conference, we will be having in our dental program open clinic starting at I think they start at 7, and so if folks need to be seen early on the 15th or the 16th of October, I would urge them to call or stop by right away, early in the morning of those 2 days. You'll be asked for your chart number, date of birth, things like that, but chances are you will get in. It's a first come, first serve for the dental services.
So Frank, if a person is in Anchorage on October 15th, 16th, and 17th and they can't wait to be seen, what should they do and where should they go? They should probably go to the emergency room. We have 2 emergency rooms that is staffed 24 hours a day. During normal hours of operations from 8 till maybe 6 or so, it is staffed with a full contingent of physicians and nurses for outpatient services which are less than emergent. So I would urge them to, if they need to be seen and can't wait for an appointment, to go to the emergency room at the Alaska Native Medical Center. Frank, are there any other special clinics going on that week that folks may be interested in? We have a well baby clinic on Thursday evening that starts at 4 and runs till 7:30. That's again by appointment. So I'd urge folks who have to or would like to have their children seen at this well baby clinic for immunization checks and just normal growth and development checks to call, again, 257-1236 to make an appointment ahead of time. If you could do that now, that would probably be advisable.
Thanks a lot, Frank. We've been talking with Frank Williams, who's the administrative officer at the Alaska Native Medical Center. ANMC is gearing up for people coming in for the AFN conference because they've noticed, too, that their appointments and statistics for people coming in from all over Alaska increases. And, of course, what we want to say is the best measure is prevention and not to have to utilize medical services. But if you do, then there's a good way to do it, and by calling and making an appointment or knowing how to utilize the system. For Heartbeat Alaska and Alaska Native Health Board, I'm Ann Walker.
We have always felt in harmony with the land.
Chakome, tapiwa, ta skumok, ta tapiachu, kenok anesche, matapiwa, makaspumos, akum.
Help the Soil Conservation Service help our earth. Call us today. We owe it to our children.
We travel now to the North Slope for a visit with an old friend, Elise Paktotak.
I recently added a dining area to my home. It virtually doubled the amount of linoleum in the house. I placed my birds and plants there. Both have their own window. They're content and happy. Except for one small problem. My dog has decided it's his duty in life to protect me from the birds. He thinks they're dangerous and should be eliminated. I've made it fairly clear I don't feel that particular course of action is appropriate. So he's frequently torn between his natural impulse to attack and his knowledge that said attack will be viewed dimly by the person who feeds him. You can see this knowledge lighting up like a little bulb in his brain just about the time he's halfway across the linoleum and heading for the cage. As the realization dawns that this attack is not a good idea, he plants his front paws on the linoleum in an attempt to stop and slides straight into the plant stand. The plant stand, being made of solid wood, usually wins these encounters. What's interesting about these attacks is what they say about his learning curve. Basically, there is none. For instance, he'll consistently catch lemmings on our tundra walks and come running back to show me his kill. My reaction to this is not something that would encourage a brighter animal to continue the activity. Then he's forced to trot along with a lemming in his mouth, looking for a good place to bury it. When we return from the walk, he stops at each burial site and digs the lemming back out. The problem comes when he already has one in his mouth and has arrived at the grave of another. It's clear from the look of panic and indecision fighting for dominance on his countenance that he's being faced with a conundrum. The fact that he's never eaten a lemming, that he has no idea what to do with one once he's killed it, does not deter his determination to not leave any behind for someone else. He'll pick one up, look down at the one left on the ground, drop the one in his mouth, pick up the other one, etc., 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 until I forcibly pull him away before he goes crazy with indecision. There's a popular saying that he who dies with the most toys wins. It's usually said about the male of the species. Mr. T is a male. I leave you to draw your own conclusions.
Thanks, Elise. It's been great having you back. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jeanie Greene, bringing you Native news across the North. Give me a call if you've got news in your village or community. I'll try and get it on the air. See you next week.